sky doesn't collapse with a scream. It collapses with a number. A cold, silent, unforgiving number. And right now, that number has Meghan panicking behind palace gates and Hollywood walls. Because what Tom Bauer has uncovered isn't gossip, isn't opinion, isn't rumor whispered over wine. It's something far more dangerous. A government record. This time, it's not about bruised egos, royal arguments, Netflix tears, or who wore what. This time, the spotlight is aimed straight at the one thing that never lies, never forgets, and never protects feelings. Paperwork! Because when a baby is born in America, the government leaves a fingerprint, a digital trail, a numerical code stamped onto a birth certificate that tells a story whether you like it or not. And those numbers are not random, they are precise, ruthless, mathematical. The first 3 digits alone reveal where that child first opened their eyes. California babies, they carry 104. Always have. But when the birth certificate shown to the world for Lilibet, Diana, Mountbatten, Windsor appeared, investigators felt their stomachs drop. Because staring back at them wasn't 104, it was 105. And in the official handbook of U.S. birth records, 105 does not belong to California. It belongs to Colorado. Let that sit. Because the world was told repeatedly, confidently, that Lilibet was born peacefully in Santa Barbara, California. Sunlight, ocean air, cottage hospital, a neat, glossy, perfectly packaged story. But numbers don't care about packaging. Numbers don't do PR. And 105 points 1,000 miles away, straight toward the Rocky Mountains. So what happened? Was it a mistake? A clerical slip? A typo that just happened to land on the exact code of another state? Or was this the first crack in a story that was never meant to be examined too closely? Because when people tried to do the most basic thing, verify the birth in California, this story took a darker turn. Investigators searched for public records under Lilibet, Diana, Mountbatten, Windsor in California, and they found nothing. No trace, no file, no confirmation. One investigator even spent 25 minutes on a recorded call with the California Vital Records Office, begging for a shred of evidence that this birth occurred where the public was told it did. The answer, a brick wall. What they received instead was something chilling, a certificate of no public record. Think about that. In a world where every royal move is documented, photographed, archived, and dissected, California effectively said, we don't know who this is. No public record, no confirmation, no birth. So whose birth certificate was shown to the world? A legal document? Or a ceremonial prop meant to stop questions before they started? And then, right as the questions grew louder, another piece slid off the board. The doctor. Dr. Melissa Drake, the high-profile Santa Barbara physician credited with delivering Lilibet. A star in her field. Beloved. Trusted. The kind of doctor people wait years to see. And suddenly, she vanished. Dr. Drake announced the closure of her practice with just 10 days' notice. An almost unheard of move in obstetrics. Pregnant patients were left scrambling, stunned, confused. The official reason? Her health. But whispers say there's more, much more, because her husband happens to run a high-end fertility clinic, and the timing of her disappearance didn't just raise eyebrows, it ignited alarms. Did she know something she wasn't supposed to know? Did the pressure of being attached to a globally scrutinized birth become unbearable? Or was silence the safest option? When the doctor disappears, the story doesn't end. It accelerates. And this is where the panic turns constitutional. Because in the United Kingdom, fairy tales don't decide succession. Law does. There is a strict rule governing who may stand in the line of succession. A rule so old, so rigid, it leaves no room for interpretation. It's called born of the body. For a child to be a prince or princess in the line to the throne, they must be naturally conceived and physically delivered by their mother. That's why, historically, royal births are announced with signed medical confirmations displayed for the public to see. But with Archie and with Lilibet, that proof never appeared. And suddenly, this isn't gossip anymore. If a surrogate was used, or if the birth did not occur as officially described, those children could be legally removed from the line of succession. Not temporarily, forever. This isn't a family embarrassment, it's a constitutional earthquake. And once you see the pattern, it becomes impossible to ignore. Because the timeline of Archie's birth already raised red flags. The story involved multiple epidurals, a bathtub birth, and returning home within hours, something medical professionals quietly shook their heads at. Then came the infamous interview, where Harry casually referred to a newborn changing over 2 weeks when Archie was supposedly only 2 days old. A slip, a small one, but patterns are built on small slips. And now Lilibet's paperwork carries the same scent. Even the document itself raises questions. On the birth certificate shown publicly, Prince Harry's name wasn't simply listed as Harry. It included royal titles. But here's the problem. California law is strict. You can choose creative names, but you cannot list official government titles as legal names on a birth record. You cannot be His Royal Highness on a California certificate, which leads to a dangerous possibility the document shown publicly may not be a legal government record at all. It may be ceremonial, symbolic, a visual distraction, a prop. And that raises the most uncomfortable question yet. If the legal record exists, why hasn't it been shown? Why the silence? Why the distractions? Why is the media obsessed with outfits, parties, and headlines while ignoring the most explosive issue of all? Because acknowledging this means admitting something unthinkable, that the world may have been misled for years, and the longer the silence lasts, the louder the numbers speak. Because 1 on 5 doesn't go away, and 105 leads somewhere very specific. Colorado, a state known for sealed surrogacy records and privacy laws that protect identities like vaults. If the trail leads there, everything changes. And this is exactly why Meghan is panicking. Because once numbers start talking, no speech, no interview, no carefully staged photo can shut them up. The question is no longer if this story breaks. It's when. Here's the moment where the whispers stop pretending to be whispers. Because once Colorado enters the story, everything people tried to dismiss as crazy talk suddenly lines up like dominoes. Perfectly, disturbingly, inevitably. Colorado isn't just another state on the map. It is one of the most surrogacy-friendly, privacy-sealed jurisdictions in the United States. It's where records can vanish behind legal walls so thick that even persistent investigators hit dead ends. Names can be protected, details can be locked, trails can go cold by design. So when that 105 code appeared, it didn't just suggest an error, it suggested intent. Because now the pieces fit too well to be coincidence: a California hospital birth that can't be publicly verified, a certificate of no public record, a doctor who exits the stage at lightning speed, a fertility clinic connection, and paperwork pointing to a state famous for sealed surrogacy. Records that's not chaos, that's a pattern. And patterns are exactly what investigators follow when the truth is hiding in plain sight. This is why insiders say Meghan isn't rattled by headlines anymore. She's rattled by records, because records don't respond to emotional interviews. They don't bend to narrative, and they don't care how powerful your brand is. And this is where the silence of the mainstream media becomes deafening. Because if major outlets acknowledge the holes in these birth records, they have to admit something devastating. They didn't just miss the story, they helped bury it. It's far easier to debate outfits, awards, and Hollywood snubs than to confront the possibility that the public was shown a ceremonial illusion while the legal reality stayed hidden. Once that door opens, the consequences don't stop at one family. They ripple through history books. And that's why coverage stays superficial while independent researchers keep digging. Then there's the name detail. The one that feels small until you understand how big it really is. Rachel Meghan Engelson. Why would Meghan's name, legally tied to her first marriage, still appear in palace documentation years later? During preparations for the 2018 wedding, when identity verification was mandatory for the Church of England, records reportedly listed her as Rachel Meghan Engelson née Markle. That's not gossip, that's administrative. And it raises a deeply uncomfortable question. Was her legal identity fully untangled when she walked down that aisle? Because when paperwork lags behind public public narrative, it creates cracks. And cracks are where secrets leak. This detail matters because it reinforces the same theme repeating throughout the story, what the public was shown versus what the documents quietly say. And now, as 2026 approaches, that gap is widening. Sources describe an atmosphere of mounting pressure, not celebration. This isn't about reputation management anymore. This is about containment. Because if the Colorado connection is confirmed, if sealed surrogacy records explain the missing California trail, then the implications are nuclear. Remember the born of the body rule: it doesn't bend, it doesn't compromise, and it doesn't care about modern optics. If the children were not physically delivered by Meghan, they were never eligible for the line of succession. Not controversially, not debatably, legally. And that would mean titles, placements, and historical records would require correction. Imagine that moment. Imagine the world realizing that the most fiercely protected narrative of the past decade was built on selective disclosure. Imagine history books quietly rewritten. Imagine official listings adjusted. That's why this story has been avoided. But avoidance doesn't erase math. And the numbers have been screaming since day one. This is where Tom Bauer enters like a wrecking ball, because his work doesn't rely on vibes or anonymous feelings. It relies on documents, timelines, and contradictions. And insiders say what's coming next doesn't soften the story, it sharpens it. The revelation isn't one explosive claim, it's something more dangerous. It's confirmation. Confirmation that the 105 code wasn't a typo. Confirmation that the California silence wasn't accidental. Confirmation that the public document shown may not have been the legal one that mattered. And once that confirmation lands, there's no spinning it away. Because birth certificates are contracts of trust between citizens and states, between monarchy and people, between history and fact. Break that contract and everything else is negotiable. This is why Meghan is described as being in full panic mode, not because of a bad headline, not because of social media mockery, but because truth is approaching without permission. And truth doesn't knock, it crashes. The doctors are quiet, the records are missing, the media is hesitant. But the numbers, they've already testified. 105 doesn't argue, 105 doesn't speculate, 105 simply points. And when the world finally accepts where it points, this won't be remembered as a scandal about family drama. It will be remembered as the moment paperwork exposed a manufactured reality. Because when the final pieces fall into place, the story of Lilibet won't just change how people view the Sussex narrative. It will change how people understand the last decade of royal history. And that's why this reckoning was delayed but never avoided. The illusion held as long as no one checked the math. Now the math has spoken.